Loyalty was never the problem, but testing it was the mistake that cost her everything. My story shows how doubt, control, and family drama can wreck love in the most brutal way possible. Hey, this is Owen. I want you to picture this. You think you're in a relationship, two people, right? But then there's suddenly a third wheel that moved in years ago and never left. That was my life with Grace. Not literally moving in, but close enough. Her mother was always there, like a background app you can't close. Little things at first, calls at weird times, a casserole appearing at the door, a comment about how I drove. Annoying, sure, but manageable. Then it crept. Surprise visits. Helpful advice about my job. Questions about where we were and who I was with. It became a slow, steady pressure. It wasn't just annoying anymore. It became suffocating. I tried to be patient. Really, I told myself people are different. Families are different. Some parents are clingy, some aren't. I dated with that in mind. But there's a line between being involved and being the main character in someone else's life. She had crossed that line. She started editing our days like she was copy editing a piece of someone else's life. She had opinions on our holidays, our friends, my habits. She liked to show up at events unannounced like she owned the RSVP list. She called me at work like she was checking my timesheet. It's the small stuff that fractures you bit by bit. You don't notice until you're tired, and you look back and think, how did we get here? I did what most people who still hope make the effort to do. I brought it up. I sat Grace down and said it plainly. This is too much. I said her mother was in our relationship more than she should be, and it was wearing me out. I said it felt like dating two people. No theatrics. No shouting. Just clear. I wanted boundaries. I wanted her to understand where I was coming from. I wanted us to be on the same team. Can you imagine thinking of your partner as your teammate and being told you're the one being dramatic? It's maddening. Grace's reaction was the same dance she's done 1,000 times. She flinched away from the fight. She softened the edges somehow, made it into something smaller so it wouldn't have to be dealt with. She defended her mother the way people defend their childhoods. Automatic, reflexive. Her response was basically that her mother meant well and only wanted what was best. She clung to that idea like it was a life raft. Who wants to push away the person who raised them, even when that person's causing the trouble? I get it, right? But when that loyalty to the person who caused the trouble becomes more important than the person you're in a relationship with, what does that say about the future? Here's the hard part. When someone grows up with that kind of controlling safety, they don't always see it as control. They see it as care. They fold it into the story they tell about themselves. Grace had that story down cold. She'd learned, probably as a kid, that mother equals protection, and protection equaled good. That pattern is powerful. You tell someone something important, and they respond with a comforting myth instead of a fix. It's easier to believe that your mother only wants the best than to admit she might be wrecking your present. So she chose the myth. She protected the myth. She defended the person doing the damage. That choice told me more than anything else could have. I thought about canceling the trip, but the conference was planned, flights were booked, I had talks to give and meetings that mattered. I told myself a few days away might actually be good. Not selfish, just necessary. Time to breathe. No surprise dinners, no passive-aggressive phone calls, no critiques about how I load the dishwasher. Simple, quiet space. That seemed like a reasonable expectation, right? I wanted that break to be a reset. I pictured coming home and having the adult conversation I'd wanted, firm boundaries, a plan, and mutual understanding. I don't care for ultimatums. I care for clarity. Why should I be the only one who stands clear? I left with that weight in my chest. On the plane, watching the city shrink, I thought about what I'd say when I returned. Clear, calm, final enough to be real, but not cruel. I wasn't leaving to escape. I was leaving to give us a chance. A few days of distance might show her what I'd been saying without the noise. I hope she'd see it. I hope she'd choose us. I hope she'd choose me. I didn't know then that choices would be made for her while I was gone. I didn't know someone would decide a test was necessary. I didn't know the way they understand trust is surveillance and setup and not conversation and mutuality. Who decides to test the person you love without telling them? Who thinks that proves anything?
Hey there, this is Grace. I can't even tell you how many times I've sat at that kitchen table and just gone along with whatever my mom was saying. It's like I shrink back into being a kid the second I sit down, hands around that same chipped mug, listening to her like I don't get to have an opinion. I hate it, but I do it anyway. And that night, when she started in about Owen being away at the conference, I couldn't stop her. She had this whole story lined up. Men cheat when they're away. Men can't be trusted. Men will always take what's offered if no one's watching. And here's the worst part. A piece of me started to wonder if maybe she was right. I mean, what if I am too trusting? What if I've been blind this whole time? Owen's never given me a reason to think he'd cheat. Not once. He's not secretive. He doesn't disappear. He's never shady with his phone. But when you hear someone repeat the same warning over and over, you start filling in blanks that don't even exist. What if I'm missing something? What if I wake up one day and it's already too late? The timing made it worse. Just the night before, Owen had sat me down and said it straight. He was tired of how involved my mom was in our relationship. He told me it felt like dating two people. And he wasn't angry when he said it. He was calm, serious, almost too calm, which somehow made it land harder. He wasn't wrong. I knew that even then. I felt it, like a knot forming in my chest. But what did I do? I brushed it off. So sitting there in Mom's kitchen the next day, when she laid out this plan to test him, I should have shut it down. I should have stood up and said no. I should have remembered his face when he told me how exhausted he was with all of this. But I didn't. I just sat there, nodding like I always do. She had answers for everything. She said better to know now than 10 years down the road. She told me stories about friends who were blindsided by cheating husbands. She reminded me of my cousin, who thought she had the perfect marriage until she caught him with someone else. Every example, every cautionary tale, she stacked them like bricks until I felt boxed in. Who was I to say no to that? What if I said no and Owen really did slip up when no one was looking? Wouldn't that make me the fool? So I went along with it. No, worse, I let her take control. She found some agency that specializes in this kind of thing. She pushed for a live feed so we could see it all play out. She acted like this was just smart insurance, like checking the locks before bed. She looked so certain, so sure this was the right move, and I just let her. And the whole time, guilt was chewing at me. I knew it was wrong. I knew Owen would see it as a betrayal. Because it is. What kind of person agrees to have their boyfriend tested behind his back? What does that say about me, about us? But then I'd tell myself it was just a precaution, that nothing would happen, that it would actually prove he was trustworthy, and then I'd never doubt him again. I spun it into something good because I couldn't face the truth that I was letting fear win. I hate admitting this, but a part of me wanted to be reassured. I wanted to see him resist temptation, to watch it with my own eyes so I could shut Mom up for good. Because maybe then she'd back off. Maybe then she'd stop saying I was blind. Maybe then she'd let me have Owen without her voice in the middle. But that thought didn't last long because the other part of me knew better. The second I agreed, I'd already crossed a line. There's no way to come back from setting up a trap for someone you love, is there? I told myself it was just for peace of mind. Just a one-time thing. Just to put this to rest. But even as I sat there watching her make arrangements, even as I nodded and said okay, my stomach was twisting. I kept thinking about his face the night before, the way he'd looked at me like he was hoping I'd finally hear him. And here I was, doing the exact opposite. I don't know why I couldn't just say no. Habit, maybe. Fear. The weight of years of being told she knows best. It's like I was split in two. One part of me desperate to protect Owen and us, and the other part terrified of going against my mom. And I hated myself for it. So yeah, I agreed. I sat there in that stupid kitchen and nodded while my mom arranged a test for the man I said I loved. And all the while I was thinking, am I crazy for doing this? Am I actually choosing my mother's paranoia over his trust? The truth is, I already knew the answers. I just didn't want to say them out loud.
By the second night of the conference, I thought I had the routine down. Meetings all day, handshakes, too much coffee, fake smiles, then a few hours to myself when the schedule finally cleared. I went down to the hotel bar just to unwind. Nothing fancy, just a beer and quiet. The kind of silence you can actually hear when nobody's demanding anything from you. I needed it. That's when she showed up. The random woman. I didn't clock her right away, but the second she opened her mouth, I knew. Something about her tone. Too polished, too targeted. She sat down like she had been waiting for me. She smiled like she already knew my name. She asked me questions that were just a little too personal for strangers. And then it hit me. Of course. This was staged. You get this gut feeling sometimes. The hairs on the back of your neck stand up, your stomach tightens, and your brain goes, hang on, this is too neat. I've been around enough people to know when something smells fake. And this reeked. She kept pushing drinks, kept asking if I was lonely, kept throwing these little lines that sounded like they'd been rehearsed in a mirror. Who actually talks like that? Not real people, that's for sure. That's when the picture came together. Grace. Her mother. Their paranoia. All of it. They'd actually gone through with something insane like this. You want to know how it feels when the person you love sets you up like that? It's not just anger. It's insult. It's betrayal. It's this sharp sting that says, you didn't think I was worth trusting. You didn't even give me the benefit of the doubt. You went behind my back and turned my life into a bad reality show. Who does that to someone they claim to love? I could have walked out right then, just thrown money on the bar, left, and ignored the whole thing. But I was so damn tired of being played. Tired of being the one who has to prove himself over and over. So I flipped it. If they wanted a show, fine, I'd give them one. I leaned in, I matched her tone, I smiled when she smiled. I let her think she was winning. I even accepted a drink just to seal the performance. Inside I was boiling, but outside I was calm. Let them watch. Let them think their little plan was working. And then, just as she was at her most confident, when she thought she had me on the hook, I stood up. I excused myself. I walked out of that bar without looking back. I pulled out my phone, stepped into the cool night air, and called Grace. She picked up on the second ring, and I didn't waste a second. I asked her one question. Was she watching me right now? Silence. Not even breathing on the line. That told me everything. That was the moment it all cracked. I wasn't sad. Not anymore. I wasn't confused. I was clear. I told her exactly what needed saying. Tell your mother she can stop spying. Tell her you can both keep each other company, because I'm done being tested like a lab rat. If this is what love looks like to you, I'm out. And I hung up before she could stammer out some excuse. I can't even explain the relief in that moment. Yeah, I was pissed. Yeah, I was disappointed. But I felt free, like I'd finally ripped out a thorn I'd been living with for months. They wanted proof. They got it. Proof that I wasn't the problem. Proof that they were. Standing there outside the hotel, I thought back to every time I tried to raise this issue. Every conversation where I said her mother was too involved. Every moment Grace brushed me off, said her mom just cared, said I was overreacting. And here we were, a hired actress in a hotel bar. A hidden camera somewhere feeding this circus straight to their kitchen. It was almost laughable if it hadn't been so pathetic. What kind of relationship survives this? How do you look someone in the eye after you've tricked them, spied on them, doubted them, and still say the word trust like it means something? You don't. You can't. So that was it. I made my choice in that phone call. I wasn't going to come home and sit through another round of excuses. I wasn't going to pretend this was a little mistake we could patch up with apologies. This wasn't a crack in the wall. This was the foundation collapsing. I went back to my room, shut the door, and just sat there. No TV, no phone, no distractions. Just quiet. And the longer I sat, the lighter I felt. It's funny how that works. You spend months carrying weight you don't even realize is on your shoulders until it's gone. And suddenly you can breathe again. People talk about loyalty like it's a test you give. But loyalty isn't about catching someone in the act or forcing them to prove themselves. Loyalty is a choice. It's choosing to believe in someone, even when you're scared. And Grace didn't choose me. She chose fear. She chose her mother's voice in her ear. And that told me everything I needed to know. So yeah, I flipped the script. They thought they were exposing me. But all they did was expose themselves. And I wasn't sticking around to play the fool any longer.
The second he hung up, I felt like the floor just dropped out from under me. I was staring at my phone, waiting for it to light up again, hoping he'd call back, that he'd give me another chance to explain. But nothing. Just silence. And the silence was worse than shouting would have been, worse than anger, because it meant he was done. My mom was right next to me, arms crossed, face set in that smug "I told you so" look, and I wanted to scream. She started in immediately, saying his anger proved he was guilty, that this just showed his true colors, that I should be grateful we'd caught it before it went further. I couldn't even process her words. My chest was tight, my throat was burning, and all I could see in my head was Owen's face, the way he must have looked when he realized we were watching him like he was some criminal. I snapped. I didn't even know I had it in me, but it came out all at once. I told her she pushed me into this. I told her she made me doubt him, that she ruined everything. And she had the nerve to look offended, like I'd slapped her. She started raising her voice too, saying she was only protecting me, that I was blind, that I'd thank her one day. But I wasn't buying it anymore. For the first time ever, I saw her for what she was, controlling, manipulative, poisoning my relationship while convincing me it was love. Do you know what it's like to finally shout back at the person who's run your life since you were a kid? Terrifying and freeing at the same time. My hands were shaking, my whole body was buzzing, but the words just kept coming. I told her I loved Owen. I told her he didn't deserve this. I told her she'd crossed every line. And then she said it. She looked me dead in the eye, her face hard and cold, and said if I couldn't see she was right, then I wasn't her daughter anymore. Just like that. No hesitation. No regret. She disowned me like I was nothing. It felt like being gutted. One minute I was furious, the next I was hollow. I couldn't even move. She stormed out, slammed the door, and I just sat there, shaking, staring at the empty space where she'd been. I thought about running after her, begging her to take it back, but I couldn't, because she meant it. And I think some part of me knew she'd been waiting to pull that card for years, waiting for me to finally push back so she could cut me off and still feel like the victim. So there I was. No Owen. No Mom. Both gone in the same night. I tried calling him, over and over, but he didn't answer. I texted him, poured my heart out in messages that probably sounded pathetic, begging him to hear me out, to let me explain that it wasn't what it looked like, that I'd been pressured, manipulated. But the truth is, it was exactly what it looked like. I didn't stop it. I didn't say no. I let it happen. And that's the part one can't get past. I can blame my mom all I want, and God knows she deserves it, but at the end of the day, I made the choice too. I nodded, I agreed. I sat there watching him get set up, telling myself it was for reassurance, when deep down I knew it was betrayal. How do you come back from that? How do you ever look someone in the eye again after you've broken the most basic rule of trust? I wanted so badly for him to prove my mom wrong. That's the sickest part. I wanted to see him resist, to watch it with my own eyes so I could finally tell her to back off. But in chasing that reassurance, I lost him. Because you don't test someone you love. You believe them or you don't. And I proved I didn't. Now it's just me in this empty house, replaying it all. His voice on the phone, calm but final. The way my mom's words cut me in half. The texts I keep sending into a void. I lost them both in one night, and the worst part is, I handed them the scissors. I don't even know who I am without those two voices in my life. One was the person I loved, the other the person who raised me, and I managed to drive them both away. Do you know what that feels like? To realize you've been standing in the middle of a tug-of-war your whole life, and when you finally pull back, both ropes snap at once. I keep asking myself if there was a moment I could have changed it. If I just told my mom no. If I'd stood up from that table. If I'd trusted Owen like he deserved. Would things be different right now? Or was it always going to come to this? The house is too quiet now. No phone buzzing, no voices, no noise at all. Just me, sitting in the wreckage of choices I made. And the silence feels like punishment.